But then I started thinking about it, and it's not just that it's hard to get, it's that that's probably not even the right argument. Like, I don't think we can say that customer education or digital CX is the only thing that leads a customer to renew or to expand.
Once again, welcome to the Digital Customer Experience Podcast with me, Alex Turkovich. So glad you could join us here today and every week as we explore how digital can help enhance the customer and employee experience. My goal is to share what my guests and I have learned over the years so that you can get the insights that you need to evolve your own digital programs. If you'd like more info, need to get in touch, or sign up for the weekly companion newsletter that has additional articles and resources in it, go to digitalcustomersuccess.com. For now, let's get started. Greetings and welcome back to the Digital CX Podcast. I'm so glad you're back with me this week and every week as we talk about all things digital in CS. This is episode 77, and we have an awesome conversation lined up for you today with Adam Avramescu, who is actually I suppose you could call it an expat. He actually studied here in Austin, which is where I'm based, and now lives abroad in Amsterdam. Another cool thing is he's a fellow podcast host. So he hosts CELab, which has been a show that's been going on way longer than this podcast. So he has a lot of miles under his belt being a podcast host. So he is obviously focused very much on customer education, CE. We talk about how, things like learning correlation are hard. We talk about micro learning, which is another buzz phrase in CE. Talk about content creation specifically for digital CS. So lots of great nuggets for you if you're involved in customer education in any way, shape, or form. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Adam, because I sure did. Yeah. So true. It's very true. Adam, welcome to the show. We jumped right into it.
Good to be here.
Like, we're right into it. But welcome to the show. I've been listening to CELab for a while. I mean, obviously, it's, you have way more shows under the belt, I will say, given that you've done it for 5 years and whatnot. But I don't know.
I think you're going to outpace us very quickly because you release more often than we do.
I'm just... Like I said, it's a little bit of insanity and a little bit of nuttiness happening over here. But
we like that. We like that.
Yeah, why not? But look, I've loved everything that you've put out. You come into the world and into LinkedIn life and all of that kind of stuff with a sense of even what you were just talking about. There's a wiseness, if that's a word. I just made up a word. There's a sense of
I'll take it.
Reverence and wise, like intelligence behind the things that you say, and it makes people listen. And I appreciate that about you. So I'm happy that you're here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that reflection. I have a love-hate relationship with social media because on one hand I love attention, but on the other hand, well, probably like a lot of people, I read, I scroll through LinkedIn and I'm like, that didn't need to be said. That didn't need to be said. Yeah. So my philosophy, and I think I try to adhere to this. I think I meet this most of the time, is like say something when you have something valuable to say, and otherwise don't worry about it.
That's right. Yeah. I love that. I too have a love-hate relationship with social media because A, I do like the attention as well. I'll admit it. But B, I don't like heart palpitations. So there you go. Because it'll do that.
Yeah. True. And sometimes though, you get a great laugh, or you get a, check this bleep out. I don't know are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Hell yes.
Great. Then I'm thinking of that scene from The Simpsons where it goes, "We'll live like kings. Damn hell, ass kings."
Oh man, you know what? It's funny. I showed my son, he's 13. I showed him The Simpsons the other day. And I didn't realize how bad that animation, it doesn't hold. We're so used to
the early seasons, the
early seasons are super, super rough. And I don't remember it that way. I remember it as this bright shining star of my youth. And so I was a little disappointed. And then I was equally disappointed when my son was like, I don't really get this.
Well, they were going for a really punk vibe at first. It took
Totally.
them a while before they decided they really wanted to smooth out the edges.
Yeah.
But okay, this is the Simpsons analogy I always use on my own podcast. We got to get to the fireworks factory.
The fireworks factory.
We got to get to the fireworks factory. I don't know if people are going to want to listen to us just
yeah, who knows?
talk about the Simpsons.
Yeah, probably not. But it was a poignant moment in my adulthood life where I was like, okay, I'm disconnected from my youth. Anyway, look, a bit about you. I mean, we talked about Slack, right off the bat, but you are, I think, relatively recently in terms of lifespan, an expat.
Yeah, I'm I guess at this point a toddler of a European. I've been living in Amsterdam for a little bit over 2 years.
Yeah.
So getting adjusted,
Yeah.
feeling a little bit more, in the Dutch life now, the
Uh-huh.
expat life.
Yeah.
But before that, I was in the Bay Area. Before that, Austin, of course.
Yep.
And originally from Montreal.
Unreal. How has the adjustment been?
It's been good. I mean, I walked into this imagining that it was going to be a bit of a new chapter, right?
Mm-hmm.
With all the challenges that comes with, but also all the fun and adventure. And I think it's lived up to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting, right? I mean, there are things that are meaningfully different about living in Amsterdam than living in Austin or,
Mm-hmm.
Wherever, whatever comparison you want to make. But at the same time, on a day-to-day basis, you wake up, you commute, you go to work, right? It's not, you go grocery
Breathe
shopping.
in, breathe
not
out.
like everything is different, right? Yeah. But
Yeah.
no, it's been a lot of fun, and I appreciate the opportunity to be out here and having this life chapter for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I've asked you on because I mean, you obviously, you're big into customer education. You have been, for a long time, and you get it in terms of CE. You're currently VP of CE and engagement, which I thought was interesting at Personio. Talk about the engagement bit. What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, so actually, even internally now, we just say VP of Customer Education.
Yeah.
But what we wanted to do originally when I started was really pull together all of the functions that either educated or connected our customers at scale, or really that dealt with the idea of learning and enablement. So when I first arrived at Personio, we had brought together 3 different teams with the intention to add one more, which now exists. So on one hand, it was our educational content team, which was originally called user education. So you could think of them as being responsible for all of our help center, our documentation, our video production, and channel management. So how do we get all of those educational materials out through in-app, email, everywhere else where you might expect to see it? So that was team 1. Team number 2 was our community team or customer engagement, and that's where engagement comes from.
Mm-hmm.
So you could think of that as our online and offline communities, the community forums, our customer events, our customer advisory board, all the ways that we're really connecting customers to each other and to us as a business and as the people in the business.
Yeah.
And then we were also bringing in an internal enablement team, which were responsible for enabling our CX individuals, our CX humans. So brought all of those together, added in a customer training team, which is now what we call our Voyager Academy. Mm-hmm. And so that was the point, to bring all of these programs together that educated and engaged our customers under this Voyage by Personio mantle. Mm-hmm. So that's why we're all together.
Yeah, I love that, because I mean, so many times you see all of those functions in a separate, maybe not separate org, but definitely different managerial structures, and it leads to silos and duplication of effort and all that kind of stuff. And I would imagine that bringing those together just makes sense, from a kind of a voice perspective, like what kind of a voice you want to portray in your content and things like that. But then obviously on the tactical level, like, you know what content needs to be developed in what kind of way to go in what certain places. So it probably helps build some efficiencies that way, I would imagine.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's not only about creating efficiency for ourselves, but whenever we do something as a company, like a major product launch or the day-to-day release process, or even a major initiative like, say, changing our pricing model, it means that instead of going and figuring out how to do that individually for all of those programs, that we
Mhm.
actually can build, like you said, some connections and efficiencies, not just for ourselves, but actually for the rest of the business.
Yeah.
So, increasingly I see what we do as being not just, and maybe we'll get into this later, not just the traditional like skinny customer education,
Mhm.
right? Where we just do customer training and we just have
Right.
an academy and we just go do webinars or something like that.
Yeah.
But really like moving towards how do we bring together all of these services into more of a scale CX
Totally.
uh, remit,
Totally. Because I mean,
So we're building scale for the rest of the business.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, so much of what we would classify as scaled CX is sure, data, automation, customer journey, all that kind of stuff. But one of the massive legs of the stool, so to speak, is content. Like, what are you distributing? When is it the right, to the right person at the right time? Like all that kind of stuff. Like, so
Yeah,
your
exactly.
own,
And that's why, yeah, like I haven't considered myself a digital customer success expert. This is something that I'm new to
yeah,
that world, and it's something that I've really been digging into. But this was the evolution of our program, right? So we came together, brought those programs together initially under customer education and engagement. And the first year or so was really figuring out, how do we work together? How do we bring these programs together? How do we gain those efficiencies
Mhm.
that you just talked about? But more recently, it's been, hey, okay, we have content, and we have actually now a really strong base of content. We have the channels through which to deliver them.
Yeah.
Now, how do we start to pull in that automation, that targeting, that relevance? So now I think we're moving more into what a lot of people would call traditional is not a good word for it, proper digital customer success, or proper digital customer experience.
Yeah, that's so cool. So, I mean, given that, one of the things I ask all my guests is like what their own kind of elevator pitch of digital CS or CX would be. So, would love to hear your words on it, since you're kind of exploring it, but intrinsically, I think the drill.
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? There's a lot of ways that you can think about it, but
Yeah.
the thing that really clicked for me when thinking about why is there a thing called digital customer experience, why is this a function that exists, is I almost think of it like an equation
Yeah.
that has a numerator and a denominator,
Mm-hmm.
or you could think of it like a ratio.
Yeah.
So I think of it as a strategy by which you maximize customer outcomes with a minimum of human effort.
Yep.
And this is the strategy and the set of programs and a portfolio that uses automation and uses content and uses tactics that scale to meet your customers where they are and drive value.
Yeah.
But it's about optimizing that ratio to build growth within
Mm-hmm.
an efficient business.
I love how you put that in terms of, driving outcomes. Not a lot of people say that when they come to the table with like their definition of digital is like, meeting the customer where they are, with what they need, when they need it, and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, you're right. The goal is you drive the outcome, and ideally you do it in a way that reserves the human capital that you have on the team for those like ultra high value scenarios where if you're involving a human in this, it means that either you've taken care of the mundane digitally, and and you're letting the human kind of be that massive exclamation point at the end of the value, or there's some stuff going wrong.
Yeah, and maybe it's because I don't come from a high touch customer success background. So
Yeah.
I mean, I know in customer success it's very common to think about outcomes as the
Yeah.
headline, but I don't know.
Uh-huh.
Maybe coming from a different background, I've thought about the function of DCX
Yep.
from a little bit of a different angle.
Which is why I love
it
asking
didn't
the
really click for me
question.
until
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I love asking the question because it's different every single time. It's so good.
Well, cool. I look forward to being included in the word cloud now.
I need to update the word cloud. I'm way behind on it.
Alex, update the word cloud.
Ah, God. So, look, I think a lot of people, when they hear the term customer education, they kind of gloss over it a little bit because a lot of people think, okay, it's training or it's e-learning or it's like whatever. I'm fortunate that I have, I have a background in learning and development. Like I know some adult learning theory. I know what the ADDIE model is. I know, like that kind of stuff. And so I've always approached it in that kind of way to say, okay, this is performance support versus training versus certification and all that kind of stuff. But I think the majority of folks just look at customer education. It's like, okay, that's like something that we can sell, or that's something that can help this here, whatever. But I guess taking the definition piece a little bit further, what I guess the way I would put this is, what would you describe as a good customer education model, or a solid CE program?
Yeah. So I think this goes back to something we were starting to get into a little bit earlier, which is the lines are blurring now around customer education. It used to be that when you said customer education, it meant nothing. It maybe meant your training services program for your on-prem tech company. But things have changed, and we've started to evolve what is included in customer education. But I want to say this through the lens of, I think at some point, what we call customer education today and what we call Scale CX or DCX, they're actually not going to look a whole lot different from each other. Because to me, customer education is really about making sure that your customers are able to achieve their performance outcomes using a portfolio of programs and strategies to achieve that. So what does that not mean? It doesn't mean limiting customer education to the traditional classroom model, having people sit in day-long workshops, or even take multi-hour e-learnings. I think some people hear customer education and they just think like, oh, this is the corporate university. No. A good customer education program really should have a variety of ways to educate the customer about different topics to build different skills. So, for instance, in the programs that I've led, often they have included the traditional academy or an academy component. These days, a lot more people, including ourselves, are tying those to skill badges and moving towards shorter form courses instead of these multi-hour, multi-day trainings or formal certifications, because a lot of people that's overkill. But also community has been now a part of our program several times, because it's one thing to teach a skill in, from 0 to 60, but it's another thing to bring people together to learn, to connect, to share with each other, as well as help centers, documentation, knowledge bases, whatever you want to call that cluster of activities, because having quick references and often having them contextual, available in the support flow, that's the key to making sure the customers get what they need when they need it. And then you start getting into things like email nurture campaigns, you start getting into in-app education, contextual help. All of those are tactics or programs that you see making up a successful customer education program. So that's why I say, I think at some point, customer education and DCX, they're going to be almost the same thing.
Yeah. It's staggering to think about, because I think as soon as you blur the lines between traditional e-learning and all the stuff that, the old school, like learning nerds will say is learning versus performance support, as soon as you start blurring those lines, then at that point, CE is all about just like, you're right, getting the content to the person at the right time. And that can be like an in-product pop-up. Somebody I recently interviewed said they were using LinkedIn ads as part of their digital engagement strategy for unengaged customers, which and really you're educating your customer on, hey, you have there's this feature in our product. Do you want to go use it? You could argue that's customer education, because it is.
Yeah. We just launched a LinkedIn page for Voyage by Personio as well, not just so we can promote new things coming out of our program, but also so that we can educate our customers who might be finding us through those types of channels instead of wanting to come to an owned platform. That's a big debate right now in the community world. But you brought up the traditional learning and development definitions of some of these things. You talked about the ADDIE model. You talked about training versus performance support. And listen, like, all these definitions exist for a reason, and I think they're useful models if you're in, say, an internal learning and development program and you're trying to explain to your stakeholders why you're taking a certain intervention.
Yeah.
And that all exists in customer education, but I try not to use that language or spend too much time on those distinctions, because it really is, it's closer to what you said. It's about finding the right ways to drive the right performance outcomes for customers, right? So if I talk about performance outcomes, if I talk about adoption, if I talk about building skills that will ultimately lead to higher retention, like those are the things that are more important for customer education. But at the same time, the other thing that I'm trying, always not to fall into is this perception that customer education is just, any content you throw out there.
Yeah.
So there's a school of thought, for instance, that, you know what, actually, like, you shouldn't have a university program or an academy program because everyone just wants, super short form TikTok, micro-learning content, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, exactly. Or like, hey, you know what you should do? You should just like take all of the Gong recordings that you have with your customers and cut the customer out of it, and just keep the things that you said and put it up on your help center or your knowledge base, and that's customer education. Well, like, yeah, if you're just starting, maybe that's a fine way to build a base of content, but that's content. That's not actually customer education. It has to have a purpose, it has to have a strategy.
The word curation comes to mind, because ultimately I think what you're trying to do, and the whole reason why you have this team around it, is you're trying to curate an experience in a controlled way, but also maybe in a haphazard way. But ultimately you're looking at, like, what are the skills gaps, whether it's like, a high influx of support tickets on this one particular topic, for instance, or whatever. Like, there are skill gaps that exist, and you're trying to strategically plug those skill gaps in ways that just, in ways that make sense, and in meeting the persona where they are when that skill gap is happening. And that's a really, it's a complex puzzle to put together. And so it may seem like haphazard in a lot of ways, but I think a lot of times,
but none of it is just like just making content, right? Like,
exactly.
You can, to your point, you can look at unsolved support tickets. You can use that to figure out where the customer is actually experiencing friction, and use that to prioritize not just what content you create, but where you serve it, how you create it, how it's delivered to customers, et cetera.
Yeah.
You can do the same thing for an onboarding program. Where are your implementation managers or CSMs spending the most time delivering one-to-one training?
Mm-hmm.
Are they doing it because it truly needs to be customized for every single customer? Or is this something where you can actually create more scalable materials that can be used either as the pre-work or as the homework? And then the humans, again, are spending their time on the more valuable, more custom things. And if you only have a certain number of hours with an implementation manager or with a customer success manager, you probably want to spend them on the more bespoke, thornier, like the stuff that actually needs to be customized.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I see, the digital motion and the human motion playing very well together, but it also informs, where should you spend your time in terms of creating and curating content.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, what happens when, you have more people joining the account and they weren't in the original training? Well, they probably want a way to get up to speed as well. So you need to be able to meet them where they are.
And sending them recorded training calls is like the quickest way to death. Because I don't want to watch a recorded training call.
I
don't want to watch a recorded call. Come on, man. Make me feel a little special and get me on board quickly. I don't need to hear your banter pre-training.
There's an art, right? Like, instructional design exists for a reason.
Exactly. Absolutely. Hey, I want to have a brief chat with you about this show. Did you know that roughly 60% of listeners aren't actually subscribed to the show on whatever platform they're listening to it on? Now, as you know, algorithms love likes, follows, subscribes, comments, all of that kind of stuff. So if you get value out of the content, you listen regularly, and you want to help others to discover the content as well, please go ahead and follow the show, leave a comment, leave a review. Anything that you want to do there really helps us to grow organically as a show. And while you're at it, go sign up for the companion newsletter that goes out every week at digitalcustomersuccess.com. Now, back to the show. I always thought it was so fascinating, the difference between, the design design and development of a piece of learning, because the two are kind of mutually exclusive, right? But without like really well thought out front end design of what it is what learning objectives are you trying to solve for, what would be the best method for doing that? Like there's a whole kind of art to figuring this puzzle out, and then ideally, the person developing it kind of has that roadmap and they can just kind of go for it. It's a cool thing to watch happen in an org that hums.
For sure. And a lot of it becomes very close to, to UX design when it's happening really well, right? You're figuring out what is the best way for the customer to achieve their outcomes with a minimum of friction.
It's almost like CE and product should have like a really close relationship.
CE and product, CE and marketing, CE and customer success. We sit in the middle of all of those, and I think it's a beautiful thing.
I think that's one of the things that CS and CE, we'll just call them. What's the combined word? Customer. Went really bad place there for a second.
Customer success education. Nope. I see it.
I don't know about customer sex education, but
no. But this does remind me. Now that you've broken that barrier, I have to tell you one of the silliest things I ever heard at a conference.
Yeah.
Somebody asked the question, how would you define the difference between education and training, right? Because we love debating terminology.
We do.
We've been debating terminology for a while, even today. And the person responded, they go, well, you wouldn't send your child to sex training class, would you?
Interesting.
And I thought, well, that was a pithy response, but I don't know if it really came down to, I don't know that it really answered the question.
It was memorable, that's for sure.
It was memorable. This was about a decade ago and I still remember it. So
I mean, sure. It gets the point across.
But actually, maybe to dig myself out of that hole, if you actually think about the difference between pure training, right? Mm-hmm. Training as we understand it, that's the very skinny version of customer education. That's the narrowest possible definition we can, right?
Right.
Let's take a discrete skill. Let's build content around it that gets a learner from zero or wherever they are to a defined state.
Right.
Education is a portfolio of activities, right? Like if you're running a great education program, then you are finding different ways to overall make sure that your customer is not just better at discrete skills related to your product, but as well that they are getting help and removing friction along the way. So it doesn't necessarily need to be, hey, I didn't have this skill and now I have this skill. It could be, I had this problem and now I don't have this problem.
Yeah.
As well as, I think in a lot of the best programs, you're also helping them learn how to do their job better. So you're teaching them something about the industry, or you're connecting them with other customers who know something about the industry and have something to share with them. So that's why I think all of these things go together.
Yeah, I think so too. And also similarly, there's this whole thing in CS about what's the difference between a digital CS program and your scaled CS program, and all the definitions that go into it. And ultimately, my opinion is that a solid digital program is part of scaling your CS, much like education is part of scaling CS and all that kind of stuff. But without getting into like those crazy semantics, like I think CS and CE share so many things because we're trying to accomplish roughly similar things, right? Yeah. So there's a natural shared kind of collaboration. There's a natural kind of share of, all kinds of different things. One of the struggles that I feel like CS and like CE and education in general has always struggled with is that ROI. Like, what by doing this thing, what's the return on investment? And it's a really hard thing to tease out because there's any number of other different factors affecting the exact same damn thing. Right. And so I think in CS, that's been the talk of CS for like the last few years, is how do you protect your seat at the table and all that kind of stuff. And it's about like revenue attribution based on the things that you're doing. And so I wanted to get your take on what that looks like for you in CE and maybe what some of the best practices are in CE for, that kind of attribution.
Yeah. I've been thinking about this for a long time. Obviously, it's a
Yeah.
big thing for customer education. And for a long time, I felt like the holy grail was going to be that I could develop some sort of model that showed, with airtight causation,
Mm.
that customer education programs directly caused, or I guess were predictive of, revenue-based outcomes. So if we can say that customers who took this many courses in our academy, or customers who were this active in our community,
Yeah.
with some sort of regression analysis, we could prove that actually led to higher retention or higher NRR via expansion, or right, whatever ultimately we wanted to tie it to at the business level, then we'd be golden. And in reality, first of all, that's really hard. That's hard to get.
Yep.
Right. It's really hard to
Super
run
hard.
a regression analysis that shows, with all the other factors that were in there, like most companies just don't have the scale or the volumes to properly show that a customer participating in educational activities upstream,
Right.
like that was the thing that really inflected their renewal or their expansion. But then I started thinking about it, and it's not just that it's hard to get, it's that's probably not even the right argument. Like, I don't think we can say that customer education or digital CX is the only thing that leads a customer to renew,
because it's
or
not
to expand, because it's not. Yeah. So with the whole, right, because you try to go and do you show some sort of correlation in the business. You say customers who have been involved with this educational program tend to renew at these rates compared to those who don't.
Yeah.
Or the average NRR for customers who participated in our programs is this compared to those who didn't.
Yeah.
Well, great. And then so the next thing that the person who presented that to you asks, because they're smart, they go, well, how do you know that isn't reverse causation, or if it isn't a false correlation? How do you know that it isn't just customers who already wanted to expand just took education because they were already engaged with us?
Yeah.
And I think that's the point. Like, my position on that for a while has been, yeah, I don't think it actually matters. I don't think we're saying that customer education or DCX is the thing that causes the customer to want to renew. The product is the thing that causes the customer to want to renew.
Yeah.
But we have to help them get there. We have to help them see the value. So, like, anyway, like, here's the thing. I think if you want to prove the ROI of your program, we have to back up from this whole holy grail airtight equation that's going to prove it. I think one way that we do it is make sure that we are very close to business priorities, and that we can demonstrate through the programs that we take on, through the stories we tell, through the quantitative and qualitative data that we share, that we are driving the outcomes that matter most to the business.
Yeah.
And that it's a very obvious, simple story what we're doing to drive those outcomes.
Yeah.
I do think it's also really helpful to make good friends with your data science and business systems teams, because there are things that you can prove. Like, showing that there's a relationship between those things is important. You just shouldn't claim that it's more than it is. You shouldn't pretend it's causal if it's not. You can say it's a factor.
Yeah.
You can say there's a strong relationship when people engage with our program. So therefore, I think we can say that our programs are a strong component or attribute of a customer renewing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think demonstrating as well, especially in today's economy, right, that we can do this more efficiently than other teams can. Because I think businesses need to get the results that they need to get, but especially for smaller customer segments, they can't do that by throwing a bunch of humans at it like they could a couple of years ago.
So true.
So especially, I think, working with our data science teams, working with our business systems teams, trying to model out, hey, this is what this same motion would look like if we didn't exist.
Yeah.
You could remove this program and you might not feel anything tomorrow, but in terms of next year's headcount planning and the ratios that you would need to build to accomplish the same outcomes, here's what that would look like.
Yeah. It's funny you say that about the BI folks. Like, whenever I've joined a new company, there's three people I always make friends with, like, immediately. It's the office manager, it's the IT person, and it's the data people. Because like those are the three people that actually make stuff happen at the company.
These are your friends.
These are your friends. But I think to your point, I love where you're going with it in terms of like, the stuff that we do ultimately feeds the customer experience. If you have a great customer experience and your product works, or at least you have the great, you have good support mechanisms to back that stuff up. I mean, that's half, if not the majority of the battle to get you to, renewal. I mean, how many times have we in our careers been surprised by a customer who has, announced that they're churning and everybody goes crazy. But the fact of the matter is the customer hasn't really heard from you after onboarding. Like, they're kind of floating out there without resources. And so I think that's the golden area for CE and digital programs to step in, especially for those smaller customers that quite frankly sometimes need way more help than your largest customer.
Yeah, exactly. And if you model out the number of touches they can have with support or CSM before that becomes wildly unprofitable, then you need to be able to do this at scale while still at the same time not leaving those customers completely in the lurch. So look, I love that we are moving more now towards using AI to serve content to these customers, intervene more with support. We're experimenting with some cool stuff with AI assistants at Personio as well. So like, I love that this is where we're going, but you know what? That still relies on really effective content served in the right way.
And good data.
And good data to serve it. Yeah, for sure. Right. Like, I think sometimes we assume we have the curse of knowledge about our own product, and we think, oh, you know what? This isn't hard to learn. It's easy, and you just do it this way. And especially if you're you're working at the company, you've been at the company a long time, you just know how it works. But if you read, oh gosh, what's the book with the Heath brothers talking about the curse of knowledge? It is, I want to say Made to Stick is the book where they talk about that.
My internet doesn't like me right now.
Okay, it's fine. So I'll give the book recommendation. Read Made to Stick by Dan and Chip Heath.
There you go.
And they talk about this in the book. There's also a similarly titled book called Make It Stick that is also very good. But anyway, they talk about this, right? The more you are familiar with a certain thing, the harder it is to learn it or to see it again through fresh eyes. So we always talk about wanting to be customer centric and wanting to have customer empathy. And one thing that customer education can do really well is actually help the business see the product as the customer sees it.
Yep.
So we can't assume that, the customer is just going to get it because the user interface is intuitive. Right? Because customer education isn't just about teaching them what buttons to click. Customer education is helping them figure out how this product helps them get their job done.
Yeah.
And that's where we should be spending our time.
Yeah.
Customer education also does something interesting that a lot of other programs don't do, and I think we could be talking about more, which is actually building customer advocacy.
Oh, interesting.
And that's a lofty term. Like I don't like using it always because it means too many different things, but I'm going to tell you specifically what I mean is that often you can point to the customers who are having a great experience in a well-built academy, or customers who are engaged in the community and building connections with each other, or, in our case, customers who have joined our customer advisory board. Like, these become your superstar customers. These become the customers that you invite back to share their insights with the rest of your company, to build customer empathy and to help build a competitive moat.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're going out there, they're sharing social proof, they're participating in customer case studies. So I think customer education programs actually give you an opportunity to identify which customers are also having a really great experience with your product.
That's cool.
Not a lot of other programs do that.
No, not at all. And I think people think of customer advocacy as like this big thing, like you get marketing involved and you do all this kind of stuff, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It can be like,
it's that, and it's, I mean, that's why I said customer advocacy, you could
all kinds
have
of different
a very
stuff.
smart person on here to talk about everything it means.
But like a really active community member, I think is also equally amazing. Somebody I love the people who like have Facebook groups about your product, because it's like that's where the real stuff happens.
I mean, like when we were at Slack, that was one of the huge things, was containing all of the, not even containing, that's not the right word, like fostering all of the ad hoc groups that were spinning up, all the communities communities of practice, the fan clubs,
Right.
and Slack was super cool in the sense that there was a Slack community with a bunch of local user groups, as well as a Slack champions network that was fostered out of our customer success team.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was super cool. Like a lot of ways to bring together all the organic love for your product.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's cool. Look, I mean, we are woefully getting close to time, and it's really making me sad because it's been a lovely conversation, and there's probably way more we could get into. But a couple things I do want to just ask that I can't frankly ask everyone is what are you paying attention to? How do you keep yourself fresh? Podcast, books, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I am generally a really big media consumer. I'm a big reader, but I don't limit it just to stuff that's directly about my field. I'm a big believer in, getting inspiration from areas that are a little orthogonal or outside your day-to-day. But some things that are closer to home, I listen to your podcast, of course, but I listen to This Is Growth by Daphne Costa Lopez quite a bit.
It's a good one.
I'm taking the Cover Your SaaS course right now.
Cool. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, that's a really cool one.
It's really good.
I think you had Jay and Jeff on your show, right?
Yeah, I've had both on. That course is a little stroke of genius, because I don't know of any other course like it that really explains, SaaS fundamentals in the way that they do, in a way that's approachable, and like pretty much anyone who's in SaaS at any level can use that info.
Yeah, and certainly for me, if I'm interacting with our CFO or
sure.
Well, really any SaaS executive, it's really helpful to have that background and to understand how those pieces fit together.
Yeah.
But I'll say in general, whenever I want to go learn something new, I'll go figure out where people are talking about it and what the podcasts are. So for instance, when I first took over Community, I started listening to In Before the Lock, which is Brian Oblinger and Erica Kuhl, right? Mm-hmm. Experts in the field. So that's generally what I try to do. I try to get smart on things if I don't know what they are.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want to give any shout outs to folks that are either doing cool stuff in CE or doing cool stuff in digital?
Oh yeah. Great. I mean, I'm a big fan of the doers, I guess. First of all, I'll say there's a lot of people who talk big on LinkedIn, but I really want to call out the doers.
Yeah.
Let's see. Who can I call out? I mean, first of all, you've had her on your podcast before. Dee from Miroverse. That whole program is
Dee Capilla,
excellent.
Man.
One of the best. Yeah, she's
awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah,
she's amazing. Yeah,
I love
really,
Dee because she's not crazy active on LinkedIn. She's one of those people who are, to your point, she's doing the thing, and she's doing the thing incredibly well. And so when you do hear from her, it's like, oh my gosh, this is like gold.
Yeah, she'll write a Medium post, and then all of a sudden it'll blow your mind.
That's right.
She's not going to say something just for the sake of saying something. But you know what? There's millions, not millions. There's a lot of people out there. I'm exaggerating.
It might be
but
millions.
Think about, okay, I'll tell you some of my favorites. Like Christy Hollingshead from Heap/Content Square. She's doing great work that bridges together a lot of these disciplines. Alessandra Marinetti, who's at Asana. Really, the whole team, on the community side and the education side at Gong, I think they're doing great work.
Yeah.
Pendo, right? You've had Erica on there, and Shelly Berkowitz as well over there. Like really, really great human. And I'm really thankful as well for the folks, in the digital customer success network who have been helping me get smart about this, including yourself, but also, Carrie from Qualtrics, Marie Lunny, Dan Ennis, right? Like
totally.
Really appreciate their wisdom and generosity.
Yeah. Dan's a good sharer. Marie, you're in the community, right?
I'm in the community,
DCS community.
And
DCS
I have the distinct advantage of being in Amsterdam.
Oh,
so
yeah, that's
we were actually able to meet up for coffee.
See, maybe I need to move to Amsterdam.
This is my pitch. Everyone should move to Amsterdam.
That's a good pitch. I mean, there's no, there's very few arguments that I could make against that.
If you want to have coffee with me and Marie Lunny, move to Amsterdam. That's it.
That's right. Well, look,
not visiting, move,
like full blown move. I've really enjoyed this convo. It's been enlightening. It's always fun to talk about CE and the broader implications and stuff like that. But where can people find you and connect with you and listen to you?
Okay. Yeah. There's the wind up. So, I am, as you mentioned, on LinkedIn. I say things when I feel like I have something useful to say.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely connect with me there. But maybe in a more structured sense, I host a podcast called CELab. Our website is customer.education, but you can also find us wherever podcasts are found. So CELab, the Customer Education Lab. And I wrote a book about customer education. It's now a few years old, but I think, a good 94% of what's in there is still relevant for today. So if you check out the customer education book, it's called Customer Education, Why Smart Companies Profit by Making Customers Smarter. You can find it on Amazon.
On Amazon. Awesome. That's cool. Yeah. I mean, a customer education book probably has way more shelf life than an AI book.
I'm thinking about second edition, and second edition's got to talk about AI, right?
Yeah, it's gotta.
The world has changed, but the fundamentals haven't.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Adam, thanks a lot for the time. I really appreciate it. And enjoy your Friday evening and your weekend, because I am literally the thing that's keeping you from beer 30, I think.
Well, you know what? It's no trouble at all, because I've been a fan of your show. I've listened to probably almost every episode. So
Dang.
It's an honor to be able to be on this side of the podcast now.
Yeah, it's always interesting as a host being on other people's shows, isn't it?
It's really like everything. I'm restraining myself not to take over or accidentally start asking you questions.
You wouldn't be the first. All right, man.
So, listeners, if you... Oh, sorry, that's you. It's you. Okay.
Yeah, my outros aren't as boisterous as yours. All right, I'm going to stop the recording because we got enough. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Digital CX Podcast. If you like what we're doing, consider leaving us a review on your podcast platform of choice. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment down below. It really helps us to grow and provide value to a broader audience. You can view the digital customer success definition word map and get more information about the show and some of the other things that we're doing at digitalcustomersuccess.com. This episode was edited by Lifetime Value Media, a media production company founded by our good mutual friend Dylan Young. Lifetime Value aims to serve the content, video, audio production needs of the CS and post-sale community. They're offering services at a steep discount for a limited time, so navigate to lifetimevaluemedia.com, go have a chat with Dylan, and make sure you mention the Digital CX Podcast sent you. I'm Alex Turkovich. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.